You're watching a classic episode of Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World Television.
While Tracker Pro Team member and Outdoor World co-host Kevin VanDam may be famous for power fishing, he never shies away from finesse baits when conditions call for it.
I absolutely love to fish jigs. I've learned on the tournament trail over the last few years that jigs are a lot more versatile than I used to think. Everybody loves to pitch and flip a jig. It's real compact. You can skip it real well underneath docks and get it into brush and bushes. It's real weedless, and it's got a profile that attracts big bass without a doubt. But in the last few years, I've learned that there's so many more ways you can fish a jig, and a lot of situations where I would normally choose a different lure, I'm learning that a jig can not only be a better lure, but it catches me the quality of fish that I need to win tournaments.
Given Kevin's high-test personality, he just can't stand to leave well enough alone. Maybe that's why he's one of the most successful tournament anglers of all time. Most fishermen drop their finesse baits into a likely spot, jig a few times, and reel like heck to get the bait back in the water. But Kevin's developed a technique that gives the classic jig and pig combo a fish-catching split personality.
Oh. They'll bite it even in open water. And one of the things I've learned with that jig is that if you just match the conditions, the color of your jig and your retrieve, I can be real successful when I have a hard time getting them to hit bigger, flashier lures. The great thing about a jig is how subtle the presentation. That 1/4 ounce jig you can keep right up there on top, and they'll just blast it like that. Where if I would have thrown a spinnerbait up there in that clear water, I mean, it's this deep, I think he would have ran from it. So the jig is just so subtle, and that's what they're up there to do. I mean, there's a lot of little bluegills and brim up there near the bank, and that's what that jig is imitating. If I just cast it up there and let it hit the bottom, they probably wouldn't do anything to it, but because it's swimming along and it looks natural, hopping it like that, it's got that rattle working, they just hammer it. It's kind of subtle, but yet you can still throw it right into the thickest cover just like that and pull them out. And today is just one of those perfect days for swimming a jig. I've got real clear water here, and I've got some cloud cover. It's kind of going in and out of clouds, a little bit of wind, and nice fish. And I can fish it through these cover, the thick tree tops, the grass, and I don't get hung up, I don't get fouled up. And when I get it in the open, I can work it along pretty quick, and I get bites in the open, or I can let it fall and work it right into. Oh, that's a good one too. I mean, I just cast it out there, started it down, and start that short hopping, and he swallowed it. He's got it all the way down. Nice fish too. There's nothing better than having the big stick in your hand, throwing it out there across a big treetop like that, and getting one to come up there and inhale that jig. Boy, you just got it. I really like that bleeding bait jig too. It has a lot of flash to it. It really looks like a sunfish or a bluegill. And that's what I'm doing with that jig swimming up off the bottom like this, is I'm making it not look like a crawdad like we normally do when we're fishing that jig on the bottom, but by swimming it like that, we're making it look like a bait fish. Bass love sunfish and bluegills, especially big bass. Let's see if there's another one in that treetop.
The jig and pig snag-free design works great for cover, and once Kevin starts to swim the bait, the right combination of skirt and trailer makes it a passable bait fish imitation for hungry bass.
That's a good one there too. I mean, he was right up there against the bank too.
The right tackle brings the whole package together.
Perfect with that wind blowing.
Kevin's gear today includes a 7-foot 4-inch Quantum PT Tour Edition Series rod, heavy action, a Quantum Accurist AC 500 PT reel, 25-pound test Bass Pro Shops XPS fluorocarbon line, and Strike King 1/4 ounce and 1/2 ounce bleeding bait Premier Pro jigs with Denny Brauer 3X trailers.
right up there shallow.
On this classic Highland reservoir pattern, Kevin cast a bass holding cover, treetops, laydowns, and grass. But once the jig and pig clears the jig zone, he turns a bottom bouncer into a swimming baitfish, doubling the odds with every cast, and in the right conditions, he hits the jackpot.
Boy, I mean, he's all the way in the back of the screen. That's a good one, too. Oh. I mean, and it doesn't get any shallower than that. When you get way back in here, it's important to make a good long cast. Get right up in that big stuff. I mean, he's right in that super shallow grass. He's trying to unlock. You know, not only is it important to have a long rod to really control that bait, you know, I can keep the rod tip up and keep the jig high in the water column or drop it down and let it get a little bit deeper, but to have a reel that picks up a lot of line. This Quantum Accurist picks up 25 inches per turn. It's got a 6:2-to-1 gear ratio, and it really moves that line. So if I'm working it along like this and a bass hits it and comes towards me, he may hit it real hard and swim 5 feet towards me. I got a long rod to pick up the line, and I got that fast ratio to catch up to him real quick to get those fish coming your way. So you really got to have it for this technique. There is good fish too. Oh man, he was right in the center of that brush top too. Oh yeah, nice one. I like to have my skirt a little bit shorter so that it really allows the trailer, or for the fish to see the action of the trailer a little more. If the water's dirtier, I like a bigger profile and a bulkier jig, so I'll leave the skirt a little bit longer. But the one thing that I definitely want to do is trim it so that the skirt is nice and even. So I'm going to get my scissors and again trim it to length. And the water's pretty clear where I'm at today, so I'm going to trim it a little bit shorter, just behind the hook. And then I'm going to take the corners and trim those nice and short. And that gives that jig, when the skirt's going through the water, that nice round profile, good side profile. Then the next thing I want to do is trim the weed guard itself. Again, if I'm flipping in really heavy cover and things like that, I may want to leave the weed guard all the way up. But I like to cut it a little bit off and cut it at an angle just right parallel with the hook point itself. So it's a little more compact. It actually stiffens up the bristles a little bit. You can spread it a little bit. That'll help it if you're flipping it into bushes and things like that. And then I'm ready to put my trailer on. Now, I like to match the trailers or pretty close to the combination of the jig. So, you know, with a black and blue jig like this, with the Bleeding Bait series, there's several colors that I could put on there that really match the jig. You know, you can put an electric blue on there, black blue flake. I like the flashier colors, the colors that have a lot of flake in them. On the brighter days, you get a good flash off them. On the darker day with clouds and things like that, this glimmer trailer, it's kind of got a bluish shimmer to it, is a real good look to it. It's going to look a lot like a shad in the water when it's coming through there. And I can actually put the trailer on a couple of different ways. Now, this jig has a really loud rattle to it, and on the rattle chamber, there's a little barb on there. And if I want the jig more compact, I'll poke it right through the head of it and thread it all the way on. And I like to just put a little drop of super glue right here on the head and thread it all the way up. And that way I've got a more compact jig. The trailer's not as long that way. It's imitating a smaller forage species. You know, this again could be a shad, could be a bluegill, depending on the water clarity and where you're fishing. Quality fish. Tell you, it is so important to have good habitat if you want to have quality fish like that right there. I mean, timber and a lot of clubs and things like that now, a lot of Federation clubs, they're working with the fisheries biologists and that and putting a lot of man-made habitat into the lakes. And not only that, but they're enhancing a lot of the spawning grounds, putting plastic barrels out with gravel in them, and you know, in soft bottom areas to really increase the number of fish that we're going to have. And that is so important. You cannot have good bass fishing without good habitat.
The next time you find yourself in lots of cover with clear water conditions, try Kevin VanDam's double trouble technique. You just might find that turning finesse baits into power baits on the same cast will keep you catching bass all the way to the boat.